There was a time when Disturbed actually meant something. When their music wasn't just noise, it was an outlet for anger and everything the early 2000s world didn't want to talk about. I still remember hearing Decadence while playing Most Wanted for the first time. They were raw, loud and unfiltered, almost like a middle finger to the system. Disturbed spoke to the outcasts and to the broken kids who didn't fit anywhere else. But somewhere along the way, it all fell apart, it seems. David Draiman started posting like a motivational speaker, and the energy they once had turned into an endless talk about depression, loss and recovery. What used to feel real started to look rehearsed. And seriously, does anyone know how many times he cried on stage at this point? The pain turned into content and the message turned into marketing. Maybe it's just me, but I can't watch it without cringing. You can see the manipulation, how he plays to the younger, emotional fans to keep this voice of rebellion alive. And honestly, in the recent years, David has reached new lows and I'm not sure he can recover from. But to understand how far he has fallen, we need to remember how high the band once stood. I'm Snorky, and if you want more deep dives into the dark side of music and media, remember to like, subscribe and hit that hype button. We small creators rely on it more than you think, so thank you for that. This isn't just another washed up rock story. This is the story about how David Draiman keeps destroying his own legacy. The story takes us back to a cold winter of 1994 in Chicago. A city built on steel was the perfect birthplace for a band like Disturbed. And somewhere in a cramped basement, three guys were about to stumble into something that would echo for the decades. It started when Dan Dogman, 𝒊𝒔𝒃𝒆𝒅 and Mike Vengren formed a small garage band called Brawl. The band wasn't special, even their singer left, and they desperately needed somebody to fill the spot, and then David saw a flyer for the audition. They jammed together, and this is what the drummer said. "I was so psyched, chill up my spine. I'm like, there is something here." We clicked right off the bat. And just like that, everything changed.
And it was a little exaggerated in terms of exactly where they were in their career, kind of as additional bait for the potential singer to be.
You see, Draiman wasn't your typical metal frontman. Before music, he actually studied to become a rabbi. He spent years in religious boarding schools in Israel and even trained in political philosophy before giving it up all for the mic.
I was always that kid in the classroom singing, on the bus singing. I was trained as a cantor, which is someone that leads a Jewish congregation in prayer as a young man. And so it's just really been with me my whole life.
Before Disturbed was born, they dropped the name Brawl. When David was asked why he renamed the band, he said, "It had been a name I'd been contemplating for years. It symbolized everything we were feeling at the time. The level of conformity people are forced into was disturbing to us, and the name just made sense." And so, in 1996, Disturbed was born. Their first album, The Sickness, dropped in March 2000, right at the tail end of the new metal explosion. There was no stopping them. David was the secret weapon the band needed, a frontman with a voice and scream unlike anyone else, and you know what's coming now. Every show was chaos, crowds roaring, teens lining up just to get their shirts signed by him. Nowadays, other things wait to be signed.
What?
But Disturbed fit perfectly in the space between roles. What do I mean by that? Well, Linkin Park was too polished for some, and Slipknot was too violent. But Disturbed, it was aggressive enough for metalheads, but catchy enough to be on the radio. And this was the perfect blend. Plus, this was the era where every teenager thought anger was theft. We were outcasts, the freaks, the angry ones, and suddenly people wanted to hear our anger. The Sickness sold over 5 million copies in US alone and became one of the most recognizable metal records of the 2000s. You couldn't escape it. It was in Tony Hawk's Underground, Rock Band, and of course, Need for Speed Most Wanted. If you were a young metalhead in the early 2000s, don't lie, they were on your playlist. I know I couldn't stop blasting Decadence while outrunning the cops. Then came Believe in 2002. Disturbed were already huge, but now they are something cleaner, sharper. Like they evolved, they had officially outgrown the basement scene and started rising fast. But the real monster came in 2002, 10,000 Fists. This album hit like a war march. It was the sound of a band that knew exactly how powerful they become. The fans weren't just fans anymore, they completely converted into a loyal community. Every song felt like it was written for the misfits. We wanted to make people feel empowered. Our music was about taking pain and turning it into strength.
What do you think it is about the band that you have been able to really connect with people throughout your career?
I think we're just honest.
Yeah.
You know, we wear our hearts on our sleeves. We write music that connects with people, and I think they can tell that we mean it.
Yeah.
You know, people can smell a fake. There's nothing fake about us.
Yeah.
A song we also need to address is Land of Confusion, which is technically a Genesis cover, but Disturbed made it sound like it was always meant to be theirs. It was political, it was angry, and somehow it still worked to be on the radio. Hearing it now, it hits a little bit differently. The song was about the world losing its mind, about leaders playing games while people suffer. By the time Indestructible dropped in 2008, it was official. Disturbed was simply everywhere. Their #1 album in a row, massive world tours, and complete domination of the Ozfest. And David was walking around like some metal messiah. Even Metallica hadn't pulled that off. You can blame that on Lars, but here is the thing about success. Once you start to get comfortable, the edge starts to fade. After a few quiet years, they came back in 2015 with Immortalized. Immortalized was the album where Disturbed proved once again they can dominate the charts, but they lost some of the chaos that made them special. For some it was just too polished and too emotional. Definitely not as dangerous as heavy as they once were.
That helps empower them. We can get an entire arena full of thousands of people who were all hardcore and heavy one second, you know, crying their eyes out the next.
And honestly, I think nobody saw this coming, because they covered then the song called The Sound of Violence, and somehow, once again, a covered song that worked for them. It was haunting, cinematic, and very emotional. But let's be real, The Sound of Violence wasn't a comeback, it was a cry for validation that accidentally worked. David had this to say: "The world doesn't need another angry, disturbed record, it needs something that speaks to the pain everyone's feeling." For a moment, it felt like they finally broken from the angry nu metal label, but somewhere between the rage of the sickness and the perfection of the sound of silence, something slipped. Everything started to feel safe, predictable, and like a formula. I mean, the music still charted, but you know exactly what you were going to get. Which, to be fair, happens to almost every band that's been around this long. But still, the irony is, Disturbed didn't get cancelled, they just stopped meaning anything. And that's where the cracks started to show, and the same band that once screamed about fighting control and corruption had become something no one expected. July 5th, 2025, Villa Park, Birmingham. It was supposed to be a celebration, a once-in-a-generation tribute to Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath, the band that practically invented heavy metal. Many legends that came that day, and the whole scene felt like it was bowing to its creators. Among them was David with Disturbed, a band built on foundation that Sabbath laid. David expressed many times his love for the band, and this was the perfect way to pay tribute to them. And that's when this happened. A sound he wasn't used to hearing: booing. Disturbed has spent their entire career worshipping Sabbath, borrowing from them, quoting them, and living by the war pigs attitude. I mean, at first was a few voices, but a low booing ramble quickly spread across the arena. In the clips, he walks out confident, and then you see how his face started to change. He seemed a bit confused even. When the footage finally hit the internet, the reaction was brutal. David pushed back, claiming that people were twisting the clips and overhyping the boos, but David of course fired back. He tweeted, "Fake news, the crowd wasn't booing, the audio was doctored. People love to twist things for clicks." But again, this wasn't random hate, there was a reason why the crowd turned. Because a few months earlier, David had made headlines, and not for anything musical. Something happened that completely shifted how people view David, and it's one of those moments that make you go just, what the hell he was thinking? This photo went viral. It showed him at the Israel Defense Force base, kneeling down, smiling, and signing the side of an actual artillery shell with "Fuck Hamas." Now, I don't care what side of the political fence you're on, we can all agree on one thing. Signing missiles is insane, because no matter which direction the thing flies, it is going to probably land on somebody who never asked to be a part of any of this. That means families, kids, and civilians. It was straight up hypocritical, because Disturbed for decades stood against the war. Again, let's mention the song Land of Confusion once again. Their lyrics were mostly built on messages of fighting oppression, not glorifying it. Instead of walking it back, David did what he always does. He doubled down. He tweeted, "Yes, I sign it, I mean it, and I'll do it again. Israel has the right to defend itself, and I stand with them 100%.
Death, death, IDF. Every citizen of the state of Israel has to serve. So you're saying that the majority of world Jews should die. That's what you're saying. Good luck with that. Iran saw how easy that.
Which is like, okay, but is he even sure for what are those things used? Music outlets began to report on it, and from that point, like every section about David turned into a battlefield. Supporters praised him for speaking the truth, critics called it propaganda cosplay. You can tell me always your opinion down below, but Disturbed built a whole image on peace, acceptance, anti-war messaging, and standing together. And then we have the image of David kneeling and smiling next to a artillery shell. I mean, just think about it. He could got up on a stage and talk about his fate or the complexity of the situation, and people might respect it. To be fair, David's connection to Israel isn't random. He was raised in a Jewish household, practiced the faith when he was younger, and he's even fluent in Hebrew. But the problem was that this was a step too far for many, and that's why he received that backlash at the Black Sabbath concert. But this whole controversy didn't stop there, because in October of 2025, the controversy finally caught up to him. Disturbed was scheduled to perform in Brussels, Belgium, as a part of their Sickness 25th anniversary tour. But just days before the show, the city's mayor, Charles Speppens, issued a police order banning the concert entirely. In the official statement reported by the Bulletin, he said, "This is about a man who signed a bomb that was dropped on Gaza. We do not support the presence of this artist, nor his position on Gaza." Tickets were cancelled and refunds started to be processed, but Disturbed's team released a short statement calling the decision unfortunate. David posted this on X, "Sad to see free speech die in Europe. Another example of cancel culture gone mad." But David, this wasn't censorship, it was consequences. Or, as one commentator perfectly summed it up, Black Sabbath wrote a song called War Pigs, and David decided to side with the pigs. At the Zemo Dome in Amsterdam on October 14, 2025, David decided to play a peacemaker. He walked on the stage with his band and said he had a message for the whole world. According to David, Disturbed isn't political, they're about unity. He told the crowd that everyone is welcome. Believer or not believer, it simply doesn't matter. Inside these shows, he said, there is no conflict.
There have been certain people out there that have been trying to put words in our mouths, trying to make you think that they know what we think about things that are going on in this world. We, in Disturbed, are all about unity. The noise of the world doesn't define us. The conflicts that are going on in this world don't define us. And it doesn't matter if you're Chinese or Taiwanese. It doesn't matter whether Indian or Pakistani. It doesn't matter whether you are Israeli or Palestinian. Everyone is welcome in our house. Every time we take the stage.
He even told the whole arena to hold hands, and for a second I thought they were about to sing Kumbaya, my lord. But it was dramatic, emotional, but also carefully choreographed.
I want you to go ahead and take the hand of the person that's standing next to you, every single person in this arena. And I want you to raise those hands in the air. Each one of you, grab the hand of the person standing next to you.
A performance that felt less like honesty and more like damage control, if you know what I mean. Because here is the thing. You make choices and you face the consequences. And signing a missile, that's a bad look, no matter how you try to spin it. Over the last few years, the image of Disturbed has started to change. And not in a good way. David's presence online had become more louder than his music. Every post, every motivational clip feels like he's trying to keep his broken hero image alive. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I completely misread it. And I know there are many people out there whose lives were genuinely made better because of Disturbed. And I respect that, but listen to me for 1 second. The more I've seen, the harder is it to ignore how hollow it all feels. Maybe some of you remember that viral speech a few years ago, I think it was 2023, where David broke down on stage talking about his suicide attempt, his pain, and how he survived.
The demons. But before I start giving this entire speech, is your English pretty good? They grow inside. You can't tell that someone has cancer from the outside, can you? The same goes for addiction and depression. And just like cancer is no one's fault, it's not because you're weak that you get cancer. I miss them so very much. I miss Chester, I miss Scott, I miss Chris. And if I could be completely honest with you, about 4.5 months ago, I almost joined them. If it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone.
The first time I saw it, I was shocked. I genuinely felt for him. I don't want anyone to go through that. It was powerful and emotional. The kind of raw honesty that made people love him in the first place. But a few months later, I went to see him live. Actually, I came for Slipknot. And that's when something felt off. He did the same speech, word for word. I looked around and saw underage emo girls crying their souls out for him. And I just stood there thinking, come on, you gotta be kidding me. It's not that I hate him or the band. They made good music, I'll give him that. But turning something as personal as into performance, repeating it night after night, like a part of a set list, it stopped feeling like something he went through, but more like manipulation. Because using something as real as this to promote your message, that's where I draw the line. Especially when you start invoking Chester's name. Using someone else's tragedy in this way to spark emotions, click or sympathy isn't awareness, it's called exploitation. And that's when I realized why Disturbed doesn't feel the same anymore. They didn't lose their edge, they lost their soul. Every new post about raising awareness feels less like empathy but more like branding. That Disturbed helps you fight your demon's image. It became a product.
See, I love, absolutely love, that Disturbed concerts have become a family affair. I love it. And this little girl...
And you know what? If their music still helps you, that's fine. I don't mind it at all. Just know one thing, you're stronger than you think. But if David keeps going on this path, if he keeps chasing validation through this image, and doesn't stop with the controversial and radical opinions, he's not just going to lose fans, he's going to destroy the legacy he built. Because right now, it feels like he's standing on thin ice. I'm Snorky, and let me know what you think in the comment sections. If you made it this far, thank you for watching, and I hope you subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. And if you want to see more deep dives into the twisted side of media and music, I think there are some videos popping up right now. Until the next time, stay curious. Bye!
Classic party. Oh, yeah.